Well, you'll all have heard of Jack. Jack the clever man. Jack the trickster. But if Jack had a fault, and perhaps he had many, it was the way he went on and on about his daughter Mary. How wonderful she was, how beautiful she was, how clever she was, how she'd looked after him so well after his wife died. And it was all right when the old king was alive, because Jack was a friend of his. But now there was a new young king, and he got absolutely tired, fed up of hearing about Jack's daughter Mary. I will say that bit again. He got fed up of hearing of Jack's daughter Mary. One day he called Jack to him and said, "Look, Jack, if your daughter Mary is as clever as you say she is, then she'll be able to answer questions of mine. If not, you are going into the deepest, darkest dungeon I have." Well, Jack didn't like the sound of that. So he said, "All right, what's the question?" "You ask your daughter, how deep is the sea?" Well, Jack was worried at that. He couldn't think of an answer to that, and he couldn't see how his daughter would know the answer to that. So wearily he went home. Now, some of you will know what it's like if a man is worried. He's grumpy. He won't eat his food. He sits in the corner in the chair. And if you say, "What's the matter?" "Nothing." Well, Mary hadn't lived with her father all her life without knowing just what it's like when a man has something on his mind. And eventually she got out of him all about the king's challenge and how her father would be in a dungeon if she couldn't answer some questions. "Oh, for heaven's sake, father, what's the question?" "He wants to know how deep the sea is." Well, Mary thought, and then Mary laughed. "Oh, that's easy, father." "It's easy?" "Yes, it's a stone's throw. For if you throw a stone into the sea, it gets to the bottom, doesn't it?" Well, Jack wasn't sure. It seemed a sort of tricky sort of answer, but then it was a tricky sort of question. So he went to the king the following day. At least he went to the palace the following day, and the king called him and said, "Well, has your clever daughter got an answer for me?" "Well, yes. She says it's a stone's throw." "Why?" "Well, if you throw a stone into the sea, it gets to the bottom." And the king laughed and said, "That's a good enough answer. But I need the answer to another question. Otherwise, into my deepest, darkest dungeon you go." "All right, Your Majesty. What's the next question?" "How heavy is the moon?" Well, Jack didn't know the answer. And he went home, and Mary was waiting and said, "Well, was that the right answer?" "Well, yes, but he's got another question for you." "All right, father, let's be having it." "He wants to know how heavy the moon is." And Mary thought and said, "Why, it's the weight of a handful of water. For if the moon shines on a pond and you put your hands underneath it, you can lift up the moon." Well, the king seemed to have liked Mary's answers before. Maybe this was the right answer. So the following day, Jack went back And he went to the king and said, "Mary's got an answer." "Oh, yes." "She says it's the weight of a handful of water because you can pick up the reflection of the moon from a pond in your hands." The king thought, and the king laughed. He said, "I am beginning to like the sound of your daughter Mary." He knew, of course, she was beautiful. "Tell you what, Jack, if she can do what I'm going to ask now, I'll marry her." Oh, Jack was so excited, and he went running home and said, "Mary, Mary, if you can do what the king asks, then he's going to marry you." "Why should I want to marry the king?" said Mary. No one had asked her. But surely you want to marry the king." "I would have liked to have been asked," said Mary. "But anyway, tell me what I've got to do." "Well, he says he wants you to come to him when it's neither night nor day. He wants you to be neither clothed nor unclothed, and neither riding nor walking." Jack was beginning to think it was a bit tricky, and he'd been a bit upset by his daughter's answers to the fact that she could marry the king. Said Mary. "Why should I want to marry the king?" But she went to bed that night and she thought about it. You see, she didn't want to spend all her days looking after her father. And, well, the king was quite a good-looking young fellow. And he seemed to have a mind that worked in the same way that hers did, and he was the king. So she got up very, very early before it was day, and she went down to the seashore, and she got some of the fisherman's net, and she took off her clothes, and she wrapped the net round her. So she was neither clothed nor unclothed. And she went and got the old billy goat out of the field. And she walked with him till she came to the palace, and then she got on his back. But her feet, of course, were on the ground, so she was neither walking nor riding. And she waited till it just begins to get light before the sun comes above the skyline. And she called out, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, I'm here!" And he threw open the window. And there she was, when it was neither night nor day, neither clothed nor unclothed, neither riding nor walking. "Ah, Mary, you've come," he said. "You're prepared to marry me?" "Yes." "And I'll marry you," said the king, "on one condition. You and I are not always going to agree. But I am the king. Argue with me as much as you like in private, but in public I must always win." And Mary agreed. But why, whether two such strong-minded people could keep to such a bargain, and just how many new tea sets the royal potter had to make, well, that's another story for another time and another place.